Good morning. On behalf of the GNCC's Board of Directors, our members and partners, welcome. And thank you for joining us for the 2026 State of the City of St. Catharines, presented in partnership with Verge Insurance Group in this milestone year as we celebrate 150 years of St. Catharines. My name is Mishka Balsam, and I have the pleasure of serving you as your MC for the next few hours. So let us begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. And we also acknowledge the contributions of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples in shaping and strengthening this region, our province, and our country as a whole. As a chamber, businesses are turning to us more than ever for perspective. They're navigating complex questions around trade and tariffs, affordability, housing supply, workforce pressures, risk mitigation, and how to fundamentally rethink operations in a rapidly evolving economy. But alongside those challenges, they're also seeing possibilities. Because when barriers shift, new partnerships emerges. When markets change, innovation accelerates. And when uncertainty rises, leadership matters more than ever. The message we hear is consistently the same. In times of disruption, our competitive advantage is unity. When business, government, and community move in alignment, we do more than weather the change, we actually harness it. And it is in this spirit that I'm honored to officially welcome you to Mayor Mat Siscoe's 2026 State of the City. But before we begin, I would like to recognize the elected officials who have joined us and whose work shapes the fabric of our region, our city, each and every day. Our interim Naga Regional Chair, Robert Foster, Regional Councillor Tim Rigby, from West Lincoln, Mayor Cheryl Ganan and Councillor Joanne Chichok, St. Catharines City Councillors Don Dodge, Matt Harris, Robin McPherson, Kevin Townsend, and Marty Mako, and of course our guest of honor, Mayor Mat Siscoe. So round of applause for all that you do. "400 of us have come together over the next couple of hours, and that does not happen without partnerships by our side. Please join me in recognizing the organization whose investment in the community makes today possible. Our title sponsor, Verge Insurance Group, Enbridge, Electra Utilities, M&P, the Naga Association of Realtors, Ontario Shipyard, F3 Networks, Cron Electric, YMCA of Naga, Soundbox Productions, UTB, 610 CKDB, and Dream 105.7. We are grateful for you being by our side. Thank you. And I'm also thankful for the leadership of GNCC's Board of Directors, whose governance and insight ensure that the Chamber remains a strong voice for business and community prosperity. With us we have Chair Stephen Orton with Meridian Credit Union, Colleen Smith with First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, Dr. Barry Wright with Brock University's Goodman School of Business, Christian Wolf with YMCA of Niagara, Bruce Peaver with KPMG, Noel Buckley with Cold Break Brewing, and Kristen Nielsen with the Next Naga Council. I thank you for always being by our side. Today's program will feature the Mayor's keynote address, lunch, and an interactive rapid response segment, an opportunity for you to directly engage with the priorities shaping our city. Each question and response will be structured to keep the dialogue focused, thoughtful, and forward-looking. We can't wait for that part of it. But we also invite you to make use of the quiet room, which is located if you leave the doors through the left here, and it's right out there, it's marked. If you are in need of a quiet room generously provided by the YMCA of Niagara, it is available for reflection, prayer, or simply a moment to recharge. We thank YMCA for their leadership in creating inclusive and very supportive environments. And our special thanks to Verge Insurance Group for not only being the title sponsor of the State of the City event, but for their pivotal role in supporting our community. Beyond providing comprehensive personal, commercial, life, and employee benefits insurance, Verge exemplifies what it means to invest deeply in community resilience. Their commitment to Niagara extends well beyond business. It is about stewardship, partnership, and building long-term confidence in our region. Our appreciation goes to Carolyn Shirk, Managing Partner and CEO with Verge Insurance Group, and her amazing team. Let us turn our attention to the screen.
For many years, Verge Insurance Group and the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce have worked side by side with a shared purpose to strengthen local businesses, supporting young entrepreneurs, and help Niagara's communities thrive. Together, we believe that when businesses succeed, communities prosper. We're proud to stand with the GNCC in celebrating 150 years of St. Catharines while building toward an even stronger future. And now, it's our pleasure to introduce a leader who shares that same dedication to progress and community. Please join us in welcoming the Mayor of St. Catharines, Mat Siscoe.
It's always a question about what intro music I'm going to choose. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank Verge Insurance for a very generous introduction and for supporting this event. I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce, Mishka, Hugo, Karina, and the entire team for making today possible. To my team, Zoe, Carrie Ann, and Brianne, thank you. You make me look like I know what I'm doing, and I appreciate everything that you do. I'd also like to acknowledge the staff from the City of St. Catharines and the region of Niagara here today, including St. Catharines CAO David Oakes and Deputy CAO Aaron Ohosky. Once again, St. Catharines has been recognized as one of Hamilton Niagara's top employers, something we should all be proud of. And any success that I've had is because of the people who do the work every day to keep the city running. Now, I'm going to admit something. Chuck McShane from the Home Builders got in my ear, and he says the big frustration at speeches like this is the long list of politicians to thank. So I will simply say thank you to all my city and regional colleagues for being here today, and if anyone is upset by that, talk to Chuck. With that said, I do want to recognize my predecessors, Tim Rigby, Brian McMullen, and Walter Senzik. That applause may have been less than genuine because Walter started it, so. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your leadership and for the support you've shown me during my term in office. The foundation we build upon was built by you, and for that I am grateful. I'd also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the absence of Jim Bradley. It is opening day in the baseball season, so Jim is probably preparing to watch baseball tonight from up above, but he was a mentor to many of us, myself included. I appreciated his willingness to share his perspective and advice, and I learned a great deal from him. I, along with many others, miss him. One piece of his advice has stuck with me. Mayors do not need to have an opinion on every issue. And speaking of issues where I decided to have an opinion, I mentioned to Mishka Balsam that I won't be speaking about governance in my speech today. The truth is, I made my thoughts clear when I spoke in 2024 and 2025 during my State of the City speeches, and then again when I presented to the Standing Committee. I also know that someone will likely ask about it in the Q&A after this speech, so I will leave any thoughts you may want to hear until then. This year marks our city's 150th anniversary, since it was incorporated on May 1st of 1876. The city has gone through changes since then. It didn't take this form until January 1st of 1961. That's Black Tuesday, as my friends in Meriton continue to refer to it. And this year, we got to celebrate those changes in a myriad of ways. Most notably is the Our Common Ground campaign. This anniversary gives us a chance to reflect on how the land beneath St. Catharines has remained a constant through generations of change, supporting communities from the first Indigenous peoples to the freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad and the agricultural life that sustains the city today. The idea of Our Common Ground symbolizes how the city's neighborhoods and people, like the parcels represented in the anniversary logo, are distinct yet connected, forming a shared community. As St. Catharines marks its 150th anniversary, the message emphasizes that the land and shared roots continue to unite residents and provide the foundation for the city's future. The big celebrations will happen on May 2nd with our birthday party at Montebello Park, followed by an enhanced Canada Day show at Montebello Park with the Trews, as well as a drone show in Port Dalhousie. This year also marks my 4th State of the City speech. Each year, I've expressed a sense of optimism that our situation here in St. Catharines would continue to improve. And while we've experienced some bumps along the way, hello, once again to our very strange neighbors to the south, that optimism continues. This year, I have the benefit of something many have been calling for recently, the mythical beast known as data, to back up where that optimism comes from. Despite the challenges we've faced, challenges not unique to St. Catharines but shared by municipalities and governments everywhere, and notwithstanding the uncertainty driven by tariffs, interest rates, and labor pressures, our city and our community have stayed focused on the key priorities that we set at the start of this council term. We've expanded our housing supply through our Housing Accelerator Fund dollars. We've supported and strengthened our business community through proactive economic development efforts. We've developed talent through Skills Development Fund partnerships and our own internal operations. And we've enhanced placemaking through the work of our planning department and initiatives like the Downtown Storefront Public Art Project in partnership with the Downtown Association. Together, these efforts have led to measurable progress, national recognition, and a growing reputation that St. Catharines is a place where ideas, investment, and people can truly thrive. So let's talk about the priorities we've set and where we're at. In the first 6 months of this term, Council set an ambitious goal, 11,000 units over 10 years to drive development. St. Catharines has emerged as a model for innovative housing efforts across Canada. While the city does not build housing directly, we play a crucial enabling role, and in St. Catharines, those housing units are being built. Last year, housing permits exceeded our target by more than 40%, and this year they continue at a strong pace. Those approvals are translating into real results, with housing starts reaching 151% of the 10-year average. More than 5,000 units advanced last year through the site plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications, more than I have seen in my 16 years at City Hall. All told, we saw more than $325 million in construction value in 2025, a 150% increase over the 10-year average. Now, among our different initiatives, the Municipal Development Corporation has proven to be our most entrepreneurial. The reality of municipal politics is that you put new ideas in place and then you wait to see if they work. In our case, we didn't wait. We identified where adjustments were needed, we made improvements, and we kept moving. The MDC is a clear example of an idea that is now delivering real results. In 2025, we entered our first joint venture with Axe Construction on a 22-unit modular build at 6 to 8 Academy Street, a property that has languished for years with no clear purpose. The MDC also entered into an agreement for the sale of the former Jack Gatekill site, with plans for 800 rental units. We're also finalizing the transfer of 2 Facer Street, the current home of the Boys and Girls Club. That will support a new multi-purpose residential development that will include a new facility for the Boys and Girls Club alongside much-needed housing on a major transportation corridor. The MDC, and what began as a concept, has been brought to life through grant funding with no risk to the property tax base. It is now positioned to generate tax revenue from sites that were once a drain on the city's finances. That's a success story by any measure. Alongside this, we are revamping our community improvement program, including a stream for projects of strategic municipal significance. We are finding ways to move projects forward with the lowest possible impact to taxpayers. As of December 1st, CIP-supported development is saving taxpayers an average of $45.47. That's up from an estimate of $27 when I did this speech in 2023, and it's generated more than $800 million in new assessment growth that otherwise wouldn't exist. We're also advancing our official plan review and the Ontario Street Secondary Plan, focused on making the toughest properties easier to clean up and develop. Our accessory dwelling unit grants continue to be fully subscribed, adding gentle density across neighborhoods in ways they can accommodate. And whether it's the new bridge housing units that are rising at 320 Geneva, the Sphere development on Welland Avenue, the foundations that are being poured on the Shanext retirement complex, permits soon to be issued for the old Hotel Dieu site, or remediation currently underway at the former Queenston Street Hospital, we are making the units happen. And we're responding to the housing crisis the only way we can, by making it easier for business to take place in our community. I also decided early on that we needed to do a better job of advocating for the community. This past year especially has been a time that has needed advocacy. It's not been easy for anyone in our community, anyone in Canada really, engaged in business. The uncertainty created by our neighbors to the south has made every aspect of business more difficult and more expensive, whether you're exporting to the US or you're trying to build here at home. I spent a lot of time pushing for policies and changes that make it easier for all of us to do business in and for St. Catharines. One of the first steps we took was adopting a Canada First procurement policy to help shield local suppliers from US tariff impacts. While local government will always seek value for taxpayer dollars, we need to recognize that dollars spent at home don't just improve the bottom line, they support the people who pay taxes in this community. What was a threat this time last year has become a reality, and while our business community continues to innovate to survive, our goal at the city has been to help them thrive. I've worked with a range of organizations to push for changes that benefit our local business community. Here at home, we've been active with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, as well as the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus, working collectively to advocate for procurement changes at the provincial level. I've also taken the co-chair role with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, where we launched an economic transformation action plan to push both Canadian and American governments to prioritize developments in the Great Lakes region. That work includes direct advocacy on Parliament and Capitol Hill and standing up for companies here at home when trade issues threaten them. Most recently, we pushed back against US port fees that would unfairly target Algoma Central and Canada Steamship Lines, two companies with outsized economic impact in our region. This advocacy must continue for the people who live and work in St. Catharines and Niagara. Through our Mayor Link series, I've also spent time meeting with businesses across the city, large and small, hearing directly from their challenges and opportunities. From Durock, working with clients like Mike Holmes and Homes on Homes to install non-slip rubber surfaces around pools, porches, and playgrounds, to Sea Park Laundry, employing 63 people and diverting millions of tons of waste from landfills, to Haver & Boker, a global manufacturer rooted right here in St. Catharines. We are listening, and we are working to support what they're building. And we've celebrated new businesses opening across the city, entrepreneurs willing to take a chance despite the global uncertainty. From Second Glow Thrift Shop to Phoenix Medical Center, from K1 Speed, where I'm happy to report I spun out Diamond Jim Diodati on the very first lap, to Physipod and Hellowell Hall, these businesses add to the fabric of our community, and we must do everything in our power to support them as they grow and thrive. All of these efforts I've been talking about have centered around one theme. It needs to be easier for people to invest in their community. I talked a little bit about the entrepreneurs I've been able to meet, and as we open businesses in the city, and the idea, that I remind myself of every time I walk into a Happy Feet, or The Grid, or Cinnabakes, is that the people opening that business are taking a massive risk, and the city owes it to them to do everything they can to support them. Our community has a history of that, building up where there was nothing before. And as we look forward to a new crop of entrepreneurs, it's important to remember where we came from and carry that forward. As you walk down St. Paul towards the new Hellowell Hall, and before I go any further, Hellowell Hall is amazing, am I right? Yes? If you haven't been, you'll walk in and you'll think, I didn't even know a place like this existed in Niagara. But as you walk along St. Paul, you'll see a red brick building with a sign facing east that says Moonbase. So what is Moonbase? Moonbase is a St. Catharines-based creative agency that blends art and brand strategy through a fully integrated end-to-end approach. Basically, they make brands look really cool and like they know what they're doing. Their client list includes Nike, Reebok, Atlantic Records, Beats by Dre, Disney, Hulu, Netflix, Sony RCA, Jay-Z, Alicia Keys, the City of St. Catharines. So yeah, they're kind of a big deal. They also created this AI video celebrating St. Catharines' 150th anniversary. So if it looks amazing, that's all them. Plus 150 years of hard work, innovation, and the people who built the city shining through every frame. Let's roll it.
They say you can tell the character of a city by the sound it makes. 150 years ago, our sound was the roar of water, the clang of industry, the scratch of a pen on a patent drawing, sketching a future we could only dream of. We were founded on a powerful idea: industry and liberality, the drive to build, to create, and the freedom to invent, to innovate, to imagine what could be. That idea became a machine, a living city. We built engines that drove a nation. We forged tools that fed families and fueled prosperity. But a city isn't just gears and concrete, it's the hands that turn them. From the United Empire loyalists who first laid roots to the waves of immigrants who brought new cultures and new dreams, St. Catharines has always been shaped by many hands. Through boom years and lean years, shifting economies and changing borders, our spirit has remained unwavering. St. Catharines at 150 is a reminder that the land is our common ground. It has carried us all forward, from the first indigenous peoples and the Underground Railroad, to the gardens and waterways that sustain us today. Rooted in this land, shaped by those before us, we build what comes next. Look closer today. The steam is gone, replaced by the hum of servers and a new digital economy. Heavy iron has given way to carbon fiber and advanced manufacturing. Our fields are now world-class vineyards drawing visitors from across the globe. From Port Dalhousie to the heart of downtown, the entrepreneurial spirit is louder than ever. It's just speaking a different language. A language of technology, creativity, and new ideas taking shape. 150 years isn't a finish line, it's a foundation. We are the makers, the growers, the coders, the creators. We are problem solvers. It's in our DNA. Every generation has faced its moment of change, and every time, St. Catharines has answered the same way. By building, by adapting, by coming together. That spirit lives in every entrepreneur opening a new door, every student launching a bold idea, every builder shaping our skyline, every artist and volunteer strengthening who we are. Built by generations of visionaries. The story of St. Catharines is still being written by all of us together.
Now, the entrepreneurs that I'm speaking about, the ones celebrated in that video, and many of you here today, have invested in themselves and in our community at a pivotal time. That commitment is inspiring, and it's why the city is dedicated to supporting you in every way that we can. That's where our economic development and government relations team comes in. Part of that team includes the St. Catharines Enterprise Center, one of the most effective and impactful investments the city makes. The talented team supports people who are investing in themselves and in our community, building not only their own futures, but creating opportunities for others as well. Last year, the office directly helped support the startup and expansion of 152 businesses employing more than 200 people. In Niagara, we often speak proudly about our quality of life, but that quality of life depends on having good jobs and the ability to afford a place to call home. Last year, our city saw a surge in self-employment, adding nearly 600 new independent businesses in just 1 year. This reflects a growing culture of entrepreneurship, innovation, and flexible work in the local economy. At the same time, overall employment expanded, with total employment surpassing 70,000 jobs. Growth was especially strong in key sectors that support community well-being and long-term resilience, including healthcare, construction, and professional services. St. Catharines is evolving, not shrinking. The economy is becoming more diverse, entrepreneurial, and service-oriented, positioning the city for sustainable future growth. We're also blessed to have some amazing partners in the community, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge some of their great successes over the last year. Our friends at Brock University launched the $100 million Spark Clean Infrastructure Initiative, a 3-year partnership with the Canadian Infrastructure Bank and Enbridge Sustain that will reduce campus greenhouse gas emissions by 83% by 2028 and cut energy usage by 60%. All of that in 2025 alongside a new 2025 to 2030 strategic plan. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Madeline Weinert, the absolute GOAT of Brock basketball, named the St. Catharines Athlete of the Year. A born and bred local, she leads almost every statistical category in Brock basketball history and was named National Youth Sports Player of the Year. She is an inspiration to young people across our community. We also saw Niagara College named Canada's top research college for the second consecutive year, attracting more than $40 million in support, reaching record enrollment, and breaking ground on a 75,000 square foot health expansion. Here at Club Roma, celebrating 65 years this April, we're reminded of the institutions that anchor our community. And on the field, the Club Roma Wolves continue to build on a strong Ontario Premier League season, recognized as the best game day environment in the entire league. In fact, across our sports landscape, success continues to build. The Niagara River Lions, back-to-back CEBL champions, once again putting St. Catharines on the national basketball map. And their president of operations, Michelle Biskup, our sports person of the year, is a true trailblazer, the first woman to lead a Canadian men's professional franchise to a championship. The Niagara Ironbacks made history as the first Canadian franchise in the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League, launching right here at George Taylor Field, and that Ironbacks name reflects the hardworking spirit of the region. I will pause for a moment and I will just say I appreciate my staff for not including the actual terrible first pitch that I threw out. I bounced it 3 times to the plate. The Niagara Ice Dogs brought playoff hockey back to St. Catharines for the first time since 2019 and are now gearing up for another run with Game 1 against Barrie tomorrow night. The St. Catharines Falcons pushed all the way to the Sutherland Cup Finals in 2025, and they kicked off their second round of this year's playoffs against Fort Erie in the coming days. The Junior Athletics hosted the Minto Cup, the National Junior A Lacrosse Championship, right downtown, a world-class event that showcased our deep roots in lacrosse, and I should give a shout out to Paul Coates and his team for all their hard work. And the St. Catharines Saints, our newest franchise, are here thanks to Pat Smith's dogged determination to bring Senior A hockey back to the city. But it's not just on the field or the ice. At the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, we kicked off a 10th anniversary that reflects a decade of impact. 6,700 performances, nearly 1 million attendees, and more than $7.5 million invested in world-class programming. It is a true community hub. The Meridian Centre continues to do the same, hosting concerts, comedy, and sport, bringing thousands of people downtown and driving economic activity and vibrancy in the heart of our city. Our public library continues to create welcoming spaces and bring people together, from Read STC to One Read, One STC Book Club, and we're looking forward to welcoming Terry Fallis as we read The Marionette later on this year. You might have noticed a lot of this happens in our downtown, where there is a very real momentum. We saw 45 new businesses open this past year, and the Downtown Association has stepped up, tripling the flower program, expanding seasonal activations, adding a full-time maintenance presence, and supporting the Welcoming Streets initiative. That work matters, not just for appearance, but for confidence in the core. And finally, the Lincoln and Welland Regiment. We've strengthened the connection between the city and our regiment, and will continue that work with a commemorative crosswalk at the Lake Street Armory. St. Catharines has a proud tradition of supporting our armed forces, and the Links and Winks remain a vital part of who we are, serving at home and abroad. When you step back and you look at all of this, our institutions, our teams, our businesses, our partners, you see something bigger. You see a city that is active, that is building, and is showing up again and again. And that's something worth being proud of. Another priority for council this term is public safety, an issue that touches everyone from the city and its partners to businesses and residents alike. And when I talk about public safety, I think it's important to always be clear about roles and responsibilities. Many areas fall outside the city's mandate. Policing obviously rests with the Niagara Regional Police. Social services and affordable housing are the responsibility of the region and the province. But we made a decision. We would focus on what we can control, and we would act. And we've seen some pretty significant results. Our public space use bylaw, introduced last spring and enforced in the fall after an education period, was not without controversy. I won't repeat the criticisms, but it demonstrated the emotion wrapped up in these issues, and council had to weigh a lot of different opinions before taking action. But the results speak for themselves. 6 months after full implementation, we've gone from 92 active encampments on public property to 2 as of yesterday morning. Where encampments were too close to homes, playgrounds, or schools, individuals were required to move, something we simply could not do before as our hands were tied by court decisions. Where individuals complied with the bylaw, they were able to remain until appropriate shelter space through the region was identified. And through the processes implemented by city staff, that space was identified. As a result, we've been able to return our parks and our public spaces to a condition where the entire community can enjoy them once again. Now, I'm not flying the mission accomplished banner just yet. We know the warm weather will bring renewed challenges. There is still a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to supportive housing and ensuring shelter is available during the coldest months of the year. But where the city has authority, we are taking action to restore a sense of safety. That's why we worked with downtown business owners to build a downtown stabilization plan and committed $500,000 to its implementation. That's why we used tools within the Municipal Act to decisively shut down a high-impact illegal drug house in the downtown core, and we're now exploring how to use that authority elsewhere. That's why we're continuing to push our partners at the Niagara Regional Police for a stronger presence on our streets, including the potential for a downtown storefront. We're taking these steps alongside everything else I've talked about because the potential of this city is too great to leave to chance or to inaction. This city wasn't built by standing still. It was built by people willing to take risks, to try new things, and to step forward, even when it wasn't easy. And when we do that, when we act, when we lead, when we put ourselves out there, we create something better for everyone in our community. Our tourism efforts are one of the clearest examples of that mindset in action. I mentioned the Minto Cup a few minutes ago, but that was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what we're doing in the sports tourism space. Over the past year alone, St. Catharines hosted the World Junior Golf Championships at the St. Catharines Golf and Country Club. We welcomed the Firefit World Championships to Seymour Hannah. More than 400 athletes competed in the Ontario Parasport Games. And coming up in a few days, and I will admit, I didn't even know this was a thing, we're hosting the Provincial Dodgeball Championships. But that range of events, provincial, national, international, doesn't happen by accident. It builds on a reputation we've earned over time, from hosting the Canada Games to the World Rowing Championships to the IIHF Under-18 Women's World Championships. Time and again, we've shown that St. Catharines knows how to do sports tourism and do it right. When those visitors come to town, though, for a tournament, a game, a concert, what do they experience? Well, for starters, a culinary scene that has absolutely taken off. And we'll always have our favorites. Wellington Court, Balit, Cully's, the Merch. I just had the bologna and pimento cheese sandwich, proof that simple still hits the spot at the Merch. But alongside those staples is a new wave of standout spots like Oddbird, Beechwood Donuts, and Pharmacy that are raising the bar. And then there's Fat Rabbit, earning national attention this past year, landing on Canada's top 100 list, Michelin's recommended list, and a number of best of rankings across North America. They've expanded. They opened Bar Les Incompetents, which is every bit as good. But the truth is, the culinary scene in St. Catharines is so hot right now that the Toronto Star named us Ontario's next culinary hotspot. And when you look around, it's not hard to see why. We are blessed with so many incredible businesses in this community. Over the past year, we've seen major investment and partnership announcements from our homegrown talent. Ontario Shipyards recently announced a new partnership with Hanwha Ocean, an initiative to build large-scale shipbuilding capacity in Ontario while keeping that work rooted right here in St. Catharines as Port Weller continues to hum. That deserves a round of applause. Now I know where Ontario Shipyards is sitting. At the Niagara District Airport, we've seen real momentum as it pushes forward with expansion and modernization. Under the leadership of Dan Pilon, a new master plan is charting a path to grow services and better serve the Niagara population. Whether inbound or outbound initiatives like the new Air Canada landline service show the airport is doing everything it can to increase capacity from YCM. That plan positions the airport as a key piece of the province's Destination Niagara strategy and a major driver of our tourism future here in St. Catharines. And as we continue to push for expanded GO service toward all-day, two-way trips to Union Station, we can't forget about Hoverlink. Now, when I first heard about hovercraft crossing Lake Ontario, I'll admit I was skeptical, but I've watched Chris Morgan take that idea and steadily bring it closer to reality. With big milestones expected in the coming year, I'm excited to see where Hoverlink can take us, literally and economically. Because at the end of the day, we are a community that is growing. And part of that growth means City Hall listening, really listening to what our business community needs. We have to keep making this an easier place to do business. And that's why another priority at City Hall has been affordability. We had to make some tough decisions early in the term, coming out of COVID, facing inflation near 9% and drawing heavily on reserves just to steady the ship. But we didn't shy away from those decisions, we made them. One of the most important steps we took was implementing multi-year budgeting. It held staff accountable for the decisions that they make, and it held council accountable to the community, that we would not drift into spending outside of a clear, disciplined plan. The results speak for themselves. Over the past 3 years, we've brought the city tax increases down to some of the lowest levels in Ontario among municipalities our size. But we didn't stop there. I called for a core services review followed by value for money audits, which are now underway. The goal is straightforward. Compare how we spend to municipalities like ours, same size, same structure, and identify where we're spending more and whether we need to change how we're delivering our services. Because if we're asking residents to pay more, we owe them a clear answer as to why. And I've been clear at the region as well, where budget pressures continue year after year, that the only way to find real savings and regain control over spending is to take the same approach. That means a core services review. That means value for money audits. That means honestly asking where we differ from other regional systems across Ontario and why. Because tinkering around the edges of the regional budget will not get us where we need to go, and it won't allow us to invest in the things that matter most. Supportive housing, programs needed to help people get off the street and into stability, and economic development that gives people the jobs they need to stay in their homes in the first place. All right, don't worry, Councillor Harris, wherever you are, we're almost done. We're going to bring this home with a few more of the awesome accomplishments we've gotten to celebrate this past year. We've celebrated some major anniversaries across the city, with companies as diverse as the Nitsopoulos family and Heart of Niagara Hotels, to the Furniture Gallery, to Niagara Precision, all celebrating 50-year anniversaries. CIBC and our downtown core beat the city to the punch by celebrating their 150th just a few months before we celebrated ours. We've also seen our city's excellence recognized across a range of arenas, from the Governor General's Medal in Architecture for the Neil Campbell Rowing Centre, to a national award from the Economic Development Association of Canada for marketing excellence in economic development. We also recognize our fire chief. Chief Dave Upper was recognized just a few months ago as the 2026 Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs Fire Chief of the Year. Now, if you know the chief, you know he's a dedicated guy who cares deeply about this community. It's great to see him recognized by others the way we all know him to be. But these accolades highlight the talent, creativity, and dedication that make St. Catharines a standout community. Last summer, at my annual golf tournament, I was sitting talking to Paul Speck and Noel Buckley, two incredible gentlemen who have never failed to support me. We were discussing city business, and I was getting into some of the more contentious topics we deal with. At the end of the conversation, Noel leaned over and he said, "You're doing a great job, Mayor. I don't know how you do it." And while I appreciate the support and I understand the sentiment, the truth is that for all of the difficult debates, the frustrations and the concerns, this job has been most rewarding because of the vision we all share for St. Catharines. A vibrant city, prosperous in different ways, and a place where all of us can choose to live, build our lives and our families, and thrive while doing so. In 2025, and throughout this term of council, we didn't wait. We didn't wait for perfect conditions. We didn't wait for certainty. We didn't wait for someone else to act. We moved. We got homes built. We supported our business community. We welcomed new talent to St. Catharines. And in doing so, we laid the foundation, not just for today, but for the next 150 years of the city's history. And because we chose action over hesitation, we are seeing the growth take hold once again. This city is rooted in our common ground. It's what supports us. It's what connects us, and it's what will carry us forward into whatever the community needs us to become. I'm grateful for the support this community has given me. I hope I've earned your trust over these past 4 years, and I'm committed to continuing that work in the years ahead, because the story of St. Catharines has never been about waiting for the future. It's about building it together. Thank you.
Mayor Siscoe, St. Catharines Council, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. I don't know about you, but when I listen to all of this, I always feel like at the Chamber we're really close to the pulse of everything that is happening within the city and within the region, and then I'm still always surprised when I hear some of the accomplishments. So thank you for your ambition that you have, for the accomplishments that you have shared with us, and I'm very much looking forward to our rapid response, which will happen right after lunch. Today's lunch, because I'm between you and the food, and it's good food, so today's lunch is brought to you by Enbridge, and it is my great pleasure to ask Julie Alexander, the Senior Advisor of Municipal and Stakeholder Engagement, to please come forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Mishka. I'm actually the one between you and lunch, so I'll try to make this quick. Thanks, everyone. As you mark the 150th anniversary of the Garden City, today's event is especially meaningful. Thank you to Mayor Siscoe for bringing together so many leaders who care so deeply about this community, the Garden City, and the future of this region. Your 2026 theme reminds us that the land beneath our feet has been a constant through time, and how valuable natural resources like waterways, orchards, vineyards, and gardens sustained us then and will sustain us in the future. You're a city that appreciates your history. You're also a city that understands energy in a very real way. For more than a century, power generated right here from the Niagara River has helped fuel Ontario's economy. Energy is not an abstract concept here. It's part of the region's identity and its economic foundation. That foundation supports one of the most diverse and resilient regional economies in the province. Manufacturing alone supports roughly 17,000 jobs and remains the single largest contributor to Niagara's economy. Agriculture supports another 24,000 jobs and contributes more than $1.7 billion annually, with the region producing 2/3 of Ontario's tender fruit and the vast majority of Canada's grapes and wine. Here you have a thriving economy that depends on energy systems that are reliable, affordable, and built to perform. At Enbridge Gas, we see firsthand how critical a dependable energy system is for that success. It's not ideology that keeps businesses online, homes warm, and hospitals running. It's reliable infrastructure. We're proud to serve the businesses and communities that make St. Catharines such a vital, thriving part of this region and Ontario's economy. We value this partnership and look forward to many more years of success together. Congratulations on 150 years of history, growth, and community. Thank you.
May I ask you for a round of applause to the staff that we've seen and behind the scenes for absolutely delicious lunch. And on that note, we're going to start our rapid response, the aspect you all have been waiting for, but can I please ask you to turn your attention to the screens just before we start out? Thank you.
the dream will always be yours. We're here to protect it.
Insurance has been in Niagara a long time. It was founded in 1953 by Angus Verge, and then soon after his brother William, Bill Verge, joined him. I came along in 1982 after completing my schooling, and we had a tremendous relationship for all those years. And by 1995, I had bought the business completely from Angus and Bill Verge.
We are now serving over 20,000 clients, with access to more than 50 insurance carriers, staying true to our roots. As Niagara's trusted insurance broker, while expanding well beyond the region, we work with integrity, competency, and empathy to make insurance uncomplicated, from business insurance, supporting industries such as agriculture, manufacturing, tourism and hospitality, and more. We help manage risk to protect your people, processes, and profits. From personal insurance to life insurance and employee benefits, and even specialized programs, we're here to protect them. From every dream achieved to sustaining those dreams, we're here to protect it. More than insurance, it's about the communities that we support, serve, and grow alongside. The dream will always be yours. We're here to protect it.
If I could ask Mat Siscoe to come forward, take the hot seat here. So the format is similar to those of you who were with us last year. It's a very similar format to it. We survey always after all of our events, and we got very positive feedback from it. So we wanted to follow the same format. It's a live dialogue, really reflecting what makes the event so distinct. It's not only listening to leadership, but also engaging. So you will see here at the front that we have 2 mics set up. Please come forward with your question. In total, in this rapid response, we have 4 minutes. So if you take a minute for your question, that gives Mat Siscoe 3 minutes, and we have a timer up here to answer it. If you take 4 minutes to ask the question, we have to go on to the next question. So take a look at it from that perspective, but I think you know the drill, and we're very much looking forward to your questions. But to start out, I'm going to pass the mic over to Mat Siscoe's wife for an opening comment to this.
Hi, everybody. If you've never been here before, I like to come up here and make fun of Matt a little bit. Like a roast. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to roast him.
There's a timer, eh?
I was actually just going to say that I think Matt's speech was really great. So, but he forgot to thank somebody. So, as his favorite artist of all time says, that's Snoop Dogg, I would like to thank me.
Excellent. That's a wonderful way to start out.
So,
do you have a comment?
Can I take a moment to comment? Yeah. So I am actually going to be very serious for just a moment. Obviously, I thank my wife. I'm very blessed. I have a family that is very understanding of my schedule, my wife especially. And so I'm going to ask one more time, a round of applause for Chrissy Sadowski, my wife. Because when, there's a contentious council meeting, and thankfully there have been no contentious council meetings recently, when I go home, she's the one who has to kind of listen to it. And she has developed a system where it definitely looks like she's listening. But I know that she is, thinking of all the other things she has to deal with in the house because she very much makes things run. So I won't take up any more time, but yes, thank you, my dear wife. I do appreciate. No. We can stop it here. Although I will point out, I'm pretty sure the timer is not actually for the people who are asking questions. It's for me because I have gone on very long tangents in the past. So with that, we'll go to whatever questions might be out there.
Excellent. So again, just a quick reminder, mics are right here up the front. If you could come to the front, and we're going to start out with Keithio over here to the left.
Yes, thank you, Mishka. Keithio Mwanzia. I'm the housing manager at Community Care of St. Catharines Thorold. So my question is housing related for you, Mr. Mayor. So what types of, you mentioned it in your speech a little bit, but what types of investments and what kind of advocacy do you see being made in things like eviction loss prevention and supportive housing? You know, it's a community investment. I know that there's limited levers for the city, but I guess I would also kind of draw on your time as a regional councillor and the fact that you sit on the Public Health and Social Services Committee. If you have a bit of a vision of you know, the types of investments that need to be made moving forward for sustainably housing people.
So thank you for the question. We made a key step during the budget process this past year. I have the pleasure of also sitting on the Niagara Regional Housing Board, and we put forward an affordable housing master plan. You know, it's going to guide the vision for affordable housing over the course of the next 30 years. And one of the key changes we made in this last budget year was to add an incremental increase to the budget so that we're funding that master plan. We recognize there's a need for more affordable housing. We've all heard the statistics about, you know, a decade plus on wait lists and everything else. We need more housing units. The master plan gets us to a place where we double it. At the same time, we've been having conversations with our social service staff about the need for supportive housing. One of the things that's not well understood, you know, every municipality has shelter beds and then they have supportive housing units. And there's a ratio that you're supposed to aim for, and Niagara is not anywhere close to the ratio we need. So we came forward last year and asked staff to put together a plan for how to address that supportive housing shortage. And they brought forward, I think, a very coherent plan. It explains the different types, the supportive and deeply supportive, I can't remember the exact word we use, but for those individuals that have a lot of difficulty being in you know, the shelter setting especially, highly supportive housing, that's what I'm looking for. They had a plan, but there was no budgetary ask attached to it. So during the last budget process, I said, listen, we're making this incremental investment on the affordable housing side. We need to make an incremental investment on the supportive housing side. And full credit to my colleagues on regional council, they were very supportive of that, and so we added that into the budget. The whole point of it really is to then be able to go to upper levels of government, because we know we can't build the supportive housing, just like we can't build the affordable housing by ourselves. It's too massive of a task. We can't put that on the property tax base. But by having the incremental amounts added into a reserve, we can then go to upper levels of government and say, listen, we have skin in the game. We have dollars that we're setting aside for supportive housing, for affordable housing. We need your help. And it's been my experience over the last 3.5 years that upper levels of government are much more willing to have a conversation about funding your ideas if you're paying for them as well. They don't want to be the only ones in the mix when it comes to financing. And so I think that's the biggest step that we're taking right now, is we finally committed actual dollars towards supportive housing with this past year's budget. And I'm going to be pushing over the coming years, hopefully, to keep increasing that investment, because when we invest in supportive and affordable housing, we're decreasing costs in other parts of the system. And we hear from experts all the time, but the numbers are very real. When you get somebody into a housing unit, all of a sudden their dependence on emergency services, the impact on policing, everything gets a little bit easier for the rest of the community. So I think that's a step we have to take.
I see that I have 30 seconds, so I'm going to ask a follow-up question to Keithio's. Do you see in the next 5, 10, 15 years that we ever will close the gap, that we will not have a gap in this particular area, or is this something that we actually have to live with and it's just a reality?
I don't know if we can close the gap. I think we have to just work towards closing it and keep pushing. Ultimately, that's the only way we're going to make the situation better for the people that are reliant on us doing something to alleviate their difficulties.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have someone else, and if I could ask you to just state your name and maybe the organization ahead of time, it might sometimes help us.
My name's Katie McCabe, and I am the part owner of Wandering Spirits in downtown St. Catharines. As a customer-facing downtown business, myself and my team are quite concerned about the potential closure of the consumption and treatment site in St. Catharines, and the motion passed at council on Monday was very encouraging to us. However, I'm wondering what options are available at the municipal level to kind of help support this, and then also for businesses who want to get involved in kind of the support of this, what can we do?
So that's a really good question, and I'm going to admit that in the aftermath of the provincial government's decision, I might not be able to fully answer it. I will say, and this is an area of disagreement, we had a very long motion that was brought to council on Monday night. There was an element of it that I don't agree with. We know that healthcare is it's a provincial mandate. That's their responsibility. Part of the motion was asking for city staff to come back with possible plans on how the municipality may step in and fund the supervised consumption site. I really struggle with that. I don't think that property tax dollars should be spent in that way. I was on the losing side of the vote, and so staff are going to report back to us. It's a very fluid space right now, and it's very difficult to know what options may exist. I do know the Heart Hub, which is the Homelessness Addiction Rehabilitation Treatment Hub, is opening up on Friday officially. The province has said that dollars that were being used for consumption sites will now flow towards those Heart Hubs. My hope is that we can make positive from that Heart Hub, that we can help people who are looking to try and get out of the addiction that they're currently involved with, to find rehabilitative options that allow them to get back on track, to find the supportive housing we're talking about, and to be able to move forward with their lives. In terms of what businesses can do, I mean, at this stage, it is literally an advocacy piece. If you disagree with the province's decision, you have to let the province know. I would suggest MPP Jenny Stevens has been very receptive to this message. She's put out a lot of messaging on social media and in traditional media that she is supportive of maintaining the supervised consumption site. I would suggest getting in touch with her, getting in touch with Minister Osterhoff's office. He also represents a portion of St. Catharines, and making your voice heard at the provincial level. I don't think this is a situation where the city or the region should be stepping in with dollars. I've been very clear, and I touched on it a little bit in my speech. Our multi-year budget kept us very, very focused on what our responsibilities are. I have a lot of competing pressures when I sit down to put together the budget that I present to council. Council has a lot of competing pressures that they have when it comes to how they pass the budget ultimately. It is hard enough just dealing with the things that do fall within our mandate. When we talk about roads and sewers, and we talk about sidewalks, we talk about recreational programming, the whole gamut, all the things that the city is responsible for, it is a struggle to be able to afford to do all of them by itself. Going off and trying to fill gaps left by other levels of government in areas that are not our responsibility, I don't think that's the stewardship of tax dollars that we should be engaging in. I think we have to stay very narrowly focused on the things that are within our mandate.
Thank you very much. I am encouraging you to come forward if you have any questions. But as I don't see anyone at the mic right now, so I'm going to follow it up only because we're talking and the message had come up about downtown and downtown St. Catharines. What often businesses are saying is that we need to see investment, that there are barriers to investing in downtown St. Catharines. And I was wondering if you can expand on that a little bit and where you see its future.
For sure. Last year, I had the opportunity to make an announcement about something that was coming out of the Mayor's Prosperity Initiative, Neighborhood Investment Plan. It's pretty, it takes its cues from the Creative Cluster Master Plan, which was completed in 07 or 08. Former Mayor McMullen will correct me if I get that wrong. But it was a very successful plan, maybe one of the most successful plans in the city's history. And then it laid out a blueprint for how to bring a lot of public sector development into the downtown. The intention was always that we would move into private sector development, and the private sector at a certain point would start to build. We started to see that. COVID came. It really slowed things down. The efforts of the Neighborhood Investment Plan are to identify how we can spur that private sector investment, because we need it. And I'm not about to sugarcoat, we know that there are societal issues that are endemic in our downtown. We've also seen some acts in the recent months, buildings burning down. These are issues we have to confront head on. We're looking from a regulatory standpoint how we can try and deal with some of these concerns. But at the same time, we need to make it easier for businesses to be able to invest, for developers to come into the downtown and identify sites that might serve a different purpose from what they serve now. This has been sort of one of my driving pushes throughout this term of council. We dealt with an issue a couple of months ago. There was a desire to look at maybe a blanket heritage designation over the downtown. From my perspective, and ultimately the perspective of council, that was a wrong step, because that would have been more difficulty layered on top of trying to redevelop our downtown. I think council agrees that we need to be trying to reduce the regulatory burden as much as we can to get things into the ground. The Neighborhood Investment Plan is going to present, I'm hopeful, a list of measures that we can take to try and speed that up, because it's been made very apparent to me in 3.5 years when I talk to developers, time quite literally is money. Every day that a project is sitting waiting for an approval or waiting for an inspection or waiting to get to the next step, those are dollars flowing out the door that you can't recoup in carrying costs. I want to minimize that as much as is humanly possible. In some cases, that'll involve doing things differently at City Hall, whether it's implementing some form of AI software to help with zoning and official plan compliance. I don't know whether it's hiring different staff in different positions. I don't know. I'm hopeful that this plan is going to come forward that identifies the concrete steps we can take. Ultimately, we have to speed up the processes. And I think you probably could sit in one of these State of the City speeches in almost any municipality across Canada, if not North America, and you're going to hear mayors say the same thing. But that's the push that I give to staff on a daily basis, is we have to find a way to make this as quick and efficient as possible. We still need to protect the people who live in the community. We still have to make sure that regulations are being followed, but we have to do it in a way that makes it as easy for the developer to continue to spend money here in St. Catharines.
Thank you very much. Just because we're talking about a certain area of the city, there have been, and in talking to many of you actually here today, there's always, every year when we hold the State of the City, it's a question about the former GM site on Ontario Street 2. And I was wondering if you could give us an update of what is currently happening, anticipated timeline, any kind of information that would assist us.
So I would have loved, State of the City speeches are a great time to be able to bring a big announcement, and I wish I could do that today. I can't. I will say, though, we've worked very closely with the mortgage holder who's currently in control of the site. From a city's perspective, our goal is to ensure that the community remains safe, and it does, but also to make sure there's an understanding about what is expected on that site as well. And that's why we're going through the secondary plan for the area, because I've said this, there's been a lot of push recently, and there's some folks in the community very frustrated about the fact that there are still buildings standing there. There is a catwalk that goes across Ontario Street. And I will reiterate, we have engineering statements and engineering reports that everything is still safe and stable. But from my perspective, I'd like to see those buildings come down as well. I think that would be a step of progress. What I try to remind folks, though, is people push and they want the city to take control over that. They want the city to take down all of these things. And I've said, everybody thinks you can just recoup the money later. That's not necessarily the case. If we go onto the site, there's a risk that we may take on some liability. And ultimately, the goal, I think, of the community is not simply to see the buildings come down. It's to see the entire site, all 48 acres, remediated. We know that it's a scar on the city. We know that it's a brownfield with environmental contamination. Our goal has to be to see the site remediated, and that doesn't happen because some buildings were taken down. What does happen if we take down the buildings, though, and we just add it on to the bill, you make that site more difficult to redevelop in the future. What I've said to council, and again, council has agreed in general on this, is we need to be very clear through the secondary plan process what is expected on that site. If we want the site cleaned up, then we need to redesignate it so that it's appropriate for residential mixed use. The reality is someone could purchase that site today, decide they want to build industrial buildings, and just slap up some industrial buildings and walk away. No remediation necessary. They would have knocked down the buildings that are there. I mean, it would look a little bit nicer, but the contamination would still exist. The goal of the community, as far as I've always understood it, is to see the site cleaned up. So we go through the secondary plan process. We make sure everybody understands that the intention of the community is to see the site remediated properly and safely so that the community can enjoy it and that it's not causing issues or concerns for the people who live around the site. And we see a redevelopment going forward in the future. I believe the city is doing everything it can right now. We'll continue to work with the mortgage holder. As I said, they're in control of the property, and we're going to continue to try and make the process easier for redevelopment. One other thing that we are doing, and I mentioned it briefly in my speech, I'm actually going to be issuing a strong mayor direction to staff in the coming days. We have a community improvement plan, but I think we've recognized that there are some limitations with the current CIP and with the CIP that's coming forward. There are sites in our city that are of municipal significance, strategic importance, and there are a number of sites around the city that would fit that bill. I'm going to ask staff to come back with a community improvement plan and program that meets the needs of those sites of strategic importance. Because I think we need to be ready to come to the table if we are redesignating lands, whether it's the General Motors property or the Queenston Street former hospital site, any of these properties, if we're going to be coming forward and we're going to be saying we want this cleaned up and remediated, we have to come to the table as well. And I think that's something that when I talk to the community, a lot of feedback that is very positive. People understand that, But I also like to always remind people, it took 100 years for that site to get to the state that it's in. It won't be cleaned in 4 or 5 years. It's going to take time, it's going to be a process, and the city's going to have to be a partner with whatever private developer steps in.
Thank you very much. I'm very conscious that we started with some very easy questions, or to a lesser degree today. So I thought maybe we'll go into another one, and this one you had mentioned and referenced in your speech, and that's governance reform. Because we're on the topic, and so I'm thinking let's just
I feel like
there.
there are snipers in the corner of the room, and they just keep shooting at me.
There has been, what months are we in? March? We're in March, I'm trying to think. So over the last 2 months, the topic has come up again. It seems like every couple of years it comes to the forefront, it makes the headlines, we talk about it, and then we have a lot of conversations about structures, maps of the region, what should it look like, what is the best way to move forward. And when we talk to businesses at the Chamber, when we talk to our members, and when businesses look at operations, we often look at it and say, like, what is the problem we're actually trying to solve? So we started out talking about a couple of problems, downtown, old brownfield sites, many other issues, housing and others, affordability has been mentioned. But when you look at governance reform, the promise, the opportunity that governance reform has, in your eyes, what problems for St. Catharines specifically or Naga-wide could a governance reform address?
I appreciate this question because during this debate that we've had, I've heard a number of people say, well, I mean, nobody's identified the problem yet. And a lot of us who have spent a lot of time talking, we've definitely identified problems. And I'm sure if I had conversations with all the tables in the room, I could probably come to some similar places. The biggest problem that I've identified is the region doesn't necessarily share the priorities of the local area municipalities. And that's not just a St. Catharines issue. That's a Thorold issue. That's a Niagara-on-the-Lake issue. That's a Niagara Falls issue. It's a Fort Erie. It's everybody. Local municipal councils make decisions. They set priorities. And then they try to move towards solving those problems that exist to allow them to achieve those priorities. The region doesn't really have that same lens. They're approaching things from a very different place. So I'll use St. Catharines as an example. We're trying to see housing get developed. We have been very clear and very forthright about the incentive programs that we want to operate in our community. Up until this point, and for another week or so, the incentives that we offer will be matched by the region, but regional council, in its wisdom, made the decision that they don't want to continue with the incentivization program. I'm not going to get into the specifics about, why that is. The frustration from our perspective is, if a developer has a choice between coming to St. Catharines to do that, where now there will be a disjointed incentivization program. We're going to Hamilton and building, where it's one level of government, it's one tax bill, it's one set of priorities, so it's one set of incentives. That's an easier step for them. And when we talk about this need to demonstrate, oh, where's the data? Why can't anybody show me data on why the system would be better? It's very difficult to capture data around the investment you lost in your community because someone said, you know what? 2 levels of government is not worth it. I'm just going to go and I'm going to develop in a place where it's easier to get the job done. These are the situations, these are the problems we run into. And I've been very clear when I speak, first and foremost, that I'm providing my opinion. My council hasn't come to a decision point on this. And I don't think they could because frankly, there's, I don't know how many tables in this room, but there's probably as many opinions as there are tables as to what we could or should do with governance. The issue that we keep coming back to, though, is not one of people at the region versus the city. I think some of the best staff people in Niagara work at the region. This isn't a person issue, it's a structure issue. And when we have a regional council that, with the exception of the mayors, has no connection down to the local area municipalities and the councils and the priorities that they're setting, that's where we run into structural problems. And I will point out, I believe we're the only region where that disconnect exists. So from my perspective, something needs to give in the structure of governance here in Niagara. I've put forward my ideas. I made sure to put a couple of slides showing, because the other thing I heard, one of the criticisms is, oh, well, you've never talked about this before. I didn't think I had stopped shutting up about it. Like, I feel like every year I've come and I've made comments and I stood in front of a standing committee and I give interviews and I talk about the issue. It's not a new issue, but it's one that has to be addressed. You know, I talked a little bit in the speech about we don't want to lose our potential. That potential doesn't just exist in St. Catharines, it's Niagara-wide potential. This is one of the greatest places on earth to live, to locate a business. You know, the current troubles with our American neighbors aside, you know, you really can't find a better geographic location anywhere in North America to locate. But there's something that's been holding us back, and from my perspective, I do believe that some of it has to be attributed to a governance model that doesn't work for 2026.
Thank you. At the GNCC, we believe that governance is critical too, because it does enable decision-making, it does attract investment, it creates an ability to actually be economically competitive and to move forward. It is and does make a significant difference. And I think we often, when we look at boards and we look at structures, we often say, are they strategic or are they operational? And I think we do better when we have an elected individuals that are strategic versus actually getting way too operational in place. And so how do we create that structure that actually supports this? I'm going to just ask a couple of follow-up questions because those are the questions we are asked and I don't have the answer, but you might actually. Your current position on governance of Niagara, what it should look like. And then the second question is related to the sense of, are we going to see May 1st represents the date when nominations open up for our October municipal election. Are we going to see any changes being announced between now and May 1st? And I don't know where the crystal ball is here or maybe the direct line, but I'm going to pass this on to you. And no, we did not talk about this ahead of time.
Do you have a question about the bills in there or anything? Like?
That's a good question,
so
actually.
I will look away from my council because they get very upset when I express my opinion. But I will say, I've been clear over the last couple of years, I think a 4-city model makes the most sense. With that said, I don't believe, from my perspective, I don't believe amalgamation is on the table at this point. I think that issue has died. And so I'm probably not going to talk a whole lot more about it. The rumor mill abounds across Southern Ontario. What I've heard most recently is that if there are any changes that come, they will be changes to all of the regions as opposed to just one, but I could be wrong. It is a rumor mill after all. The idea of mayors forming the regional council has been floated. I've heard a lot about that. I will honestly say, I have no idea whether any changes will come down. From my perspective, if something was going to happen, I would assume it would be announced this week. I would think it would have to be announced this week. Just knowing a little bit about legislative timelines and having to get things through the legislature, I don't think anybody, elected official or not, wants to encounter a situation where May 1st comes and no changes have been made, people start to register for an election, and then changes happen. I think that's a worst case scenario. So I've always been of the opinion that probably if there were going to be changes, they had to come sometime. This is the first week the legislature is back. I would have thought something would come this week. The budget comes tomorrow. It's entirely possible it might be folded into that. I feel like we're probably running out of time if it doesn't happen this week. But I'd never say never. I'm prepared to, I've been very clear. I'm running for re-election. I assume I'm running for re-election as the mayor of the city of St. Catharines, but things can change from time to time.
Okay. I've got about 1:30 left on this one, and I'm following up on something that someone had said here over lunch to me, and that was the question, and has been covered in the media too, about a referendum, the idea of it. So if on the ballot there will be referendum under the Municipal Election Act, it can be only a question that answers with yes or no, so that's the only kind of question it has. And for it to be binding to council, it has to have 50% of the voter turnout. So in the last election, we had 26% voter turnout. So we need to move 26 to 50%, and half of them need to then vote in yes or no on this particular one. So that's the idea around a referendum and a question, if that is of interest to people. What are your thoughts on it?
That's as loaded a question as we can get. You know what? My understanding is, based on the rules as they currently exist, we would not be able to have a referendum in this upcoming election because the deadline has passed. With that said, the provincial government can change the rules if they want to change the rules, and they could put a referendum question on. The struggle that we would have, and I think everybody would probably agree, what would be your yes-no question on the ballot? Because simply asking the question, do you believe the governance system in Niagara should be changed, would be just about the only straightforward yes-no question that isn't leading people to a specific system or not. And I don't know if you can have a series of 10 to 15 referendum questions that say, do you think governance should be changed, yes or no? Do you think amalgamation should be considered, yes or no? If yes, do you think 1 city or 4 cities or 12 cities? There are just too many iterations of answers to this question. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I did this. I tried to change governance back in 2011 and 12 with Mayor McMullen. We ran a governance committee. I went around and I spoke to all kinds of communities and came back and said, we should have dual role elected councillors. So they would sit at the city and the region. We would have had 6 just city, 6 dual role. For the record, that's how other regions do it. And that would help to alleviate that disconnect. It failed at council. It didn't get any farther than that. We tried again a couple years later. And we tried to send a single representative as a dual role councillor. It failed, again, at City Council. At that time, I said, the only way you will ever see governance reform in Niagara is if it's imposed by the province. Because there's too many municipalities with too many different opinions and too many different ideas. And I don't believe we will ever come to a consensus amongst ourselves. The one thing that I believe there is consensus on is a frustration with the 2 levels of government, and I believe most of the community believes that something needs to be reformed at the regional level of government for the reasons that I've laid out. I think it's actually a pretty overwhelming majority, like more than 2/3 of the community, that thinks that there's an issue there. And it's been my experience that the older someone is and the longer they've lived in Niagara, the more they think something needs to change. But I don't know what kind of a referendum question you could put on the ballot that would actually get you to a clear outcome.
And I actually want to just say thank you so very much for answering it, because these are the conversations that are going on, and I actually fully agree with you. I would not know what the referendum questions would look like, because the majority of people we're talking about, governance is always up for improvement, and it should be a constant one. So that I think is a given one, but at what cost? And if you ask that question, then people are not saying if that means that our tax rate is going up by 10% and others. So there's always that secondary part of it that's not as clear. But I have Cara Cressett standing there, and I'm so glad she's taken the mic.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Siscoe. So I'm Cara Cressett from the APRA, and I'm also chair of WIN Council, so Women in Niagara. The question I have is on behalf of WIN, as well as Next Niagara, and Kristen would not come up here with me, so I am coming up with the question. As AI disrupts many entry-level roles, as well as roles that are held by women, we are seeing youth unemployment rates rise quite a bit, and a disproportionate amount of women that are impacted by AI. Particularly, what do you think that the city, well, either is doing or could do to help proactively create some pathways for employment because of this disruption that we're seeing?
So that's a really good question, and it's one that we've started to grapple with and we're trying to get a better handle on. I think we're still so early in the evolution of artificial intelligence that it's a difficult question to answer. And it's been the general rule that whenever there's been these major technological disruptions in society, they tend to overly affect certain segments. There's a lot of disruption, but ultimately new opportunities are created. That was true, during the Industrial Revolution. That was true during the first tech revolution. I think we're seeing it now as well. I'm not going to pretend to know what the next evolution will look like, but I will say it is something that we are taking very seriously at City Hall. We need to gain a better understanding of what capabilities are going to look like going forward. And we need to better understand what sectors that will disproportionately affect. So I apologize that I can't give you a better answer than that. I feel like as a, really philosophical here, as a species, we really have to try and better understand exactly what this looks like. I would argue more of our time right now, though, should be focused on trying to push upper levels of government to create the guardrails I think we all recognize are necessary. Because there seems to be a complete lack of regulation. And I talked earlier about trying to reduce regulations in some areas. When you're encountering something brand new like this, I think a certain level of regulation is necessary. And I say this as someone who's getting ready to run an election campaign in a year where all of a sudden deepfake video and audio is very easy to recreate. When I wrote my speech, I plugged it into Speechify, and I've given Speechify my voice, and it read the speech back to me in my voice. And when I have played speeches in the past to my kids using that app, they go, wow, I didn't realize you recorded your speech. Like, it's pretty close. And that's a relatively inexpensive, text reading app. I think we need to be adamant with upper levels of government to help create guardrails to protect society as we figure out exactly what this thing is, because I feel like something's being created, a very tiny proportion of people really understand it. And I'm not one of them. A very tiny proportion of the public understands what this is, and until we all have a better handle on it, I think there needs to be some safety built into the system.
Thank you. I think it's a great question. I want to give a shout out to our Women Council and Next Niagara Council because they constantly challenge us at the GNCC to saying when something new is coming up like AI or policies are there, and it's always to apply the lens of saying who's benefiting from this policy and who's going to be left behind. And I think when we ask ourselves those questions, we often can look at it and see it differently. I am going to just make one little tie back to governance structure, and then I'm promising all of you I will never mention governance reform again until maybe 3 years from now. But I think sometimes when we have an opportunity to look at our own internal structure, I think it would be really interesting to see also what role technology can play. Because so that we're not only making a structural change, but that we are becoming transformational in the change that we're putting forward. And I think that makes a difference. But on that note, I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Barry Wright, with Goodman School of Business, and known to everyone here.
Actually, I'm Barry as a defensive back coach at St. Sir Winston Churchill football program. Could you tell me what you think the Buffalo Bills will be doing next year? And then following up on that question, binational, and with more on the international aspect, and what are we doing as a city to be able to look at our neighbors across the river and also from an international economic development area?
So I'll take the first part of the question first. I'm excited for the Bills' upcoming campaign. I think Joe Brady was the right, well, no, I don't actually. I hate the choice of Joe Brady as the coach because it seems like we always think the answers to our problems are inside the building. But I'm excited to see what a new revamped receiving core will do with Josh Allen. Go Bills. On to the actual question, which was about binational. So I have the opportunity to serve as the co-chair of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. I had mentioned that earlier. Right now, my co-chair is the mayor of Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which proves that there is actually a place called Sheboygan, just like Wayne's World said there was. He'll be transitioning out. It'll be the mayor of Milwaukee coming up next, Cavalier Johnson. And I've developed good relationships with my colleagues in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. It's a binational organization. We've actually grown it. Interesting side note, by the way, I did not realize this. All 4 mayors that were here today, myself, Mayor McMullen, Mayor Rigby, Mayor Senzik, we've all been chairs of this organization. It currently has more than 430 municipal, tribal, and First Nations communities as a part of it. It's one of the biggest binational organizations in existence. And working with our Democrat and Republican mayors on the other side, with the tribal leaders on the other side of the border, has been very instructive in trying to identify ways that we can cooperate. I will say at a municipal level in the United States, the commonly held belief, doesn't matter which side of the aisle they sit on, is that this is a blip, and that things will change potentially as soon as November. From the Canadian side, a lot of us have tried to express like this is not a blip. Like we're not treating it as a blip and we'll all just go back to where things were. The message coming from the Canadian side has been, listen, we're learning something right now and we're not going to forget this lesson. In more honest moments, a lot of us will say this could take a generation or more to change. The trading relationship is very clearly different now. And when we discuss this with provincial officials, with federal officials, when we're in Washington or on Parliament Hill, that's the sense that I get from the provincial and federal governments as well. And so diversification now has to be the name of the game. I've spent a lot of time advocating mostly to drop the interprovincial trade barriers, because I think that was something we talked a lot about at the beginning of last year, and then it kind of fell off the radar. And I've come back to it a few times with our colleagues at the province. Those interprovincial trade barriers adversely affect a region like Niagara. And I'm just thinking about the wine industry as a simple example. One of the biggest frustrations wineries talk about is how hard it is to ship within Canada. That's ridiculous. Like that is a situation that should not exist. And although interprovincial trade barriers became an issue for a short period of time, it's dropped off the radar. Some of us are trying to put it back on the radar. From a municipal standpoint, we don't have a lot to do with those interprovincial and international trade deals, but we can put pressure and we can advocate to our colleagues at upper levels of government that these are priorities. I think that's what we have to continue doing. From my perspective, like I mentioned, we got into the ear of the U.S. Trade Representative down in Washington with respect to the port fees issue. It seems like something which is very minor, except that it could have a very outsized impact on a place like Niagara because of how much shipping goes on here, how much we're dependent on marine commerce. We have to keep leveraging organizations like the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative to be able to get in front of the people that actually have the ability to make changes. I'm confident the USTR is going to make a different decision when the time comes, but we'll keep hammering away at the legislators or the members of Congress in New York State and the senators from Wisconsin and all the people that will listen to us to try and break down the barriers that are currently up.
And I really appreciate always that shared effort it takes, because even from a chamber perspective, not just from the Ontario and Canadian chamber perspective, but even from a GNCC perspective, we're trying to do the same with our partners that we have south of the border, all of partner chambers along the border as well, to making a difference. And I think it does take a joint effort. But as Dr. White actually had brought up the idea of what does the future look like, you're looking at the opportunities that are there. One of the questions, you mentioned it in your speech, was the Niagara District Airport. And we always, from our perspective, have always looked at it and saying it can be economically transformational for us if we really are looking at this as possibly being a fully functioning airport and the opportunities that we have. And at the same time, in December, we heard a lot of announcements from the provincial government when it comes to Destination Niagara. Often the focus is on Niagara Falls, a little bit on Niagara on the Lake, and maybe some sectors such as wineries. But what is St. Catharines' opportunity when it comes to assets that we have, such as the district airport, and opportunities when you look at the provincial government and saying they want to invest in tourism? What is the opportunity for St. Catharines?
I think it goes beyond tourism. I think the reason for investing in Niagara District is a whole of economy benefit that can be provided. You know, we do have tourism assets in St. Catharines. I always try to talk them up because one of the conversations around Destination Niagara is like, we get people to Niagara Falls for the day, that's great, but how do we turn it into a 4-day stay where they're spreading money across the region? St. Catharines has a lot to offer, just like our friends in Lincoln have a lot to offer. That's why we've set up our joint DMO with them. I think all the different parts of Niagara have something to offer when it comes to tourism. But beyond that, we have a lot of industry in St. Catharines as well. And having access to an airport that functions like an airport, I think is a net benefit for the entire of the economy in Niagara. And so that's the angle we've been pushing. The master plan that we have in place, we're using Destination Niagara, and we're going to wring every cent of investment we can out of Destination Niagara, and it is tourism focused. But the investment in the airport goes well beyond that. And that's the message that I tried to drive home when I'm talking about it. Because a lot of people will ask, you know, what's St. Catharines' interest in this? Well, we own half of it. So, you know, it's half our asset. But when I talk to business people in the community, having the ability to not have to drive to Pearson because you can go to Niagara District, like that would be a significant savings for a lot of people. We saw it for a brief period of time with Fly GTA. You know, there were business people in the community that took advantage of that. It changed the dynamic of getting to Toronto or Ottawa for meetings. You know, it's a day trip now as opposed to, you know, I'm flying to Ottawa and I'm there for at least 36 hours. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and we have to keep pursuing it.
That makes sense. We have a question over there. I'm wanting to end over here. I'm conscious of time, but I think maybe let's bring them forward.
Thank you. I'll be quick. Hi, Mayor Mat Siscoe. I'm Zayon. I'm from the Brock Young Liberals. There's been a lot of local reporting on the privatization of our water and our water waste management. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm not a fan of the idea of privatization. I definitely think a municipal service corporation, though, with water and wastewater is the direction we need to go. You know, we've seen a lot of benefits in other areas. Our electrical utility, for example, Electra, is, you know, it's owned by municipalities. I think it does a very good job of delivering service and value for service in our area, as well as in the rest of the electric service area. I know, you know, all of the electrical grids in and around are owned in different ways by different groups of municipalities. I think moving to a situation like that with water, wastewater makes sense. I think there's room for private investment, but ultimately, you know, I think public ownership has to be maintained because we've learned lessons in the past. We've learned lessons in the past about water supply and how important and how critical it is for control to be maintained by municipalities to be able to do that. So, you know, having municipal service corporations that are owned by the different municipalities in that area, I think makes sense.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hish Clifford. I'm the president of the Niagara College Student Administrative Council. I'm also on Next Niagara as well. My question for you, Mayor Siscoe, is that every year, Niagara College and Brock University produces talented graduates who immediately look to the GTA for jobs within the new economy, per se. So we're talking finance, engineering, technology, creative sectors. What economic development initiatives are you championing that will enable these sectors to thrive within our city and hopefully retain that talent so that people can see a future for themselves here?
Thanks for the question. I think the biggest initiative that we're working forward is the transportation piece and making it easier to create the connection between Toronto and St. Catharines and Niagara. You know, when we talk about the need for all-day two-way GO transit, we talk about the need for a service like Hoverlink. The goal is to create stronger connections because I think the reality is, you know, when you live near the biggest city in the country, the fourth biggest city in North America, you know, there's going to be a flow towards that place. But I think there's opportunities around that place, which is what St. Catharines and Niagara are, for economic activity to migrate away from Toronto to be there but still be connected. But you have to have a viable transportation link to be able to do that. And the reality is right now, it's very difficult to get into Toronto to do anything. From my perspective, you know, in the perfect world, I could be at Queen's Park regularly. But we are very specific about our trips to Queen's Park because going to Queen's Park right now is a day. it's a day. You're looking at 2 or 3 hours trying to get there, hopefully 2 or 3 hours coming back. I can remember with the CAO on one trip taking the GO train to Burlington and then still 3 hours from Burlington just because of the traffic situation. That's not viable for any business to have their employees stuck trying to get back and forth. So we have to have a better transportation network. And that's why you'll see, and this is one of those areas where there's unity amongst the Niagara mayors and the Niagara regional councilors and all of the city councilors and town councilors across. We need better transportation links. We need to be better connected into the GTHA than we are right now. So that's the biggest piece that I'm advocating for right now, because I think that changes a lot of metrics for business that wants to come back here. The other piece I will say, and just in terms of how do you attract those business sectors that were mentioned, it comes back to governance reform. Make it easier for people to invest here. And again, if they're having to jump through 2 sets of hoops instead of 1, we're running into a lot more difficulty.
I appreciate it. And also, on behalf of everyone here in the room, I wanted to say thank you so very much for being open to this format of it, because one never knows really what is going to be said on the mic or what is going to come forward, but I really do appreciate your honesty and sincerity and also your diligence actually in trying to answer all the questions. So thank you so very much. And on that note, I'm going to ask Sarah Hart, Executive Officer of the Niagara Association of Realtors, because we talked about housing and we talked about so many things, and Sarah is really taking, and her organization in partnership with many other organizations across Niagara is really taking a lead in that role, and so it's a pleasure to ask her to provide some of the closing comments. So thank you, and thank you to you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mishka. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Hart. First, go Bills. Secondly, go Dogs go. I am the Executive Officer of the Niagara Association of Realtors. We are proud to be sponsoring today's event hosted by the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank Mishka and her team at the GNCC for another fantastic event, so let's give them a big round of applause. The Niagara Association of Realtors is one of the region's largest professional associations. At NAR, we work every day with public office holders to support a vibrant real estate market that gives Canadians from all walks of life the opportunity to find an alternate place and accessible home. Today, across our region, young families are struggling with the cost of housing, and they are looking for help. They are also deeply worried about economic uncertainty and the impact of U.S. trade disruptions. At difficult times like this, we rely on strong, principled leaders like Mayor Siscoe. Mayor Siscoe has championed building more affordable homes for families, as we've heard, and led the charge to attract new investment into St. Catharines. He is committed to working across party lines to get things done for our community, and he has been a great friend to the Niagara Association of Realtors, or NAR of the North. Our city is better prepared to deal with challenges we face because of Mayor Siscoe's work. Mayor Siscoe, thank you for being the leader that we need here in St. Catharines right now. Thank you for your commitment to protection and defending the Canadian dream of home ownership in our city. And thank you for all your hard work in the service of our great community. At NAR, we look forward to continuing to partner with you to build a great city and a thriving Niagara region. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving another big round of applause for our Mayor, Mat Siscoe.
Thank you so very much to Sarah and her amazing organization. I want to conclude, I really do, today with a sincere thanks to the staff, as I had mentioned beforehand, here at Club Roma, the Mayor's Office, and our sponsors, our board, our volunteers, and especially my colleagues. We could not have done it without you, and neither could we have done it without our title sponsor, Verge Insurance Group, and our sponsors, Enbridge, Electra, MNP, the Niagara Association of Realtors, Ontario Shipyards, F3 Networks, Cron Electric, YMCA of Niagara, Soundbox Productions, UTV, 610 CKDB, and Dream 105.7. A state of the city is more than just an update. It is a reflection of the collective effort we all put forward. St. Catharines at 150 is not defined only by its past. It is defined by the courage to build a future. So I thank you all, each and every one of you, for being part of it. Thank you.